Hey everyone, and welcome to my talk, Astro Studio, All Secrets Revealed. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Astro Studio and of course about Astro itself. Now, who am I? Well, I'm Elian van Cutsem. I'm a software engineer at Astro. I work on the Astro project full time. I'm also very active in the wider conference community, as in React Brussels, BGS, React Paris, and other conferences soon to come. I also organize my own meetups in Belgium called devs.gent. So if you ever want to come to one of my conferences, please reach out. You can also follow me online with @AlienCodes displayed at the bottom of the screen. Cool. Of course, you're not here to hear about me, but you're here for Astro. So let's just jump into Astro. By no means we're like the new kid on the block anymore. We are kind of getting a known framework now. So maybe you've heard of us, but still I want to give you a little bit of an intro. So what is Astro? Well, Astro, we typically approach it as the web framework for content-driven websites. What do we mean by that? Well, Astro is very comparable to Nuxt or Next, but with different touch. It's a meta framework, as you will. Now, this is a little bit of what the Astro syntax looks like. So it's very easy. You can import components. You can use them on the page as you would in any normal meta framework like Nuxt or Next. And we kind of differ in that a bit, since you can just use plain JS there in the top of the screen, between the code fences, or TS if you prefer, and everything else is JSX-like. This is the actual code of my website, which looks like this. Very simple, since you can see like the four different components there displayed very clearly on the screen. And you might not like it, how this page looks, but it is what peak app web design looks like. So at least someone agrees with me. Cool, so very familiar syntax, you know that by now, not too difficult. Now, the very special thing is that this all ships with 0 kilobytes of JavaScript by default. Now, that's very important because Astro is an opt-in framework, not an opt-out framework. You build features on top of the framework, not opt-out of features that we already given you. So think of the normal framework, Next or Nuxt like. They all are like this. So you have a couple of components and a page layout, and all of them require JavaScript to render, which is really weird because, for instance, here in the footer, you have a lot of links, but why do we need links to have JavaScript in them? We really don't need that. So Astro by default will actually generate everything statically as being HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript where you need it. So out of the box by default, it will get Lighthouse 100 everywhere, since there is no actual difficulty by loading stuff, which is really cool. And that's why we always say Astro is ideal for content-driven frameworks. Now, what if you need interactivity? Of course, I can see you thinking that, like, yeah, I have my homepage, I've built it with Astro, it's now HTML and CSS, but I want a button that actually works. Well, of course, we have thought about that as well. So we have client directives. Well, client directives are how you define for your website or your app component to be interactive. So I've listed here a couple that we use the most often. So client load will just ship the JavaScript component whenever it's on the page. Client idle, on the other hand, will wait until the main browser thread is idle and then only start shipping JavaScript. So only whenever the browser is idling. Client media, for instance, is really handy when you have buttons only showing up on, for instance, mobile devices. What if you want my mobile menu, but only want to hydrate that simple button whenever it's actually displayed on the page? That's where the client media could come in. Client only is used for stuff that's not really aware of a compiler. So we just don't compress it all. It's just JavaScript and plain JavaScript. Cool. So with that couple of client hydration and client directives, you can actually transform this simple, very static page that I'm showing here on the stage. You can actually rewrite that to be a little bit more interesting. So now my header will have JavaScript for the buttons. My sidebar might have some buttons, and maybe I have an image slider that uses a couple of interactive buttons. That's all there for you to use. Now you can also build your own client hydration or client directives. Since that, of course, Astro is open source and is pluggable by default, you can build your own. For instance, Ben, one of my colleagues at Astro, actually built client when raining in New York, which is really funny. So every time it rains in New York, your component will get hydrated. If not, then it will never get hydrated, which is really funny. So this concept we call islands, since every island is an interactive island, or an island of interactivity. Now, the cool thing is that with Astro, you can use any component library you like. For instance, if you want to use ChatCN with React, you can totally do so. You want to use Cobalt with Solid, you can do so. If you want to use Svelte or Vue, you can totally use them. That's up to you. Now, for instance, here, this is just a very simple showcase of where I built a counter in React. So I'm going to skip this since everybody knows kind of how to build a counter in React. So now here we have the React component on the page. Let's put it actually in the Astro component as well. Let's do that here. Recording Elian is very slow, I can see. Yeah, so now the counter is on the page. So when I go to the browser now, I'm going to skip this quickly. I'm adding a client directive. So client, let's take load or idle, doesn't really matter. You also see client visible there. That's another one that's really useful. So now if I start the dev server, it will actually show up on the page and work, which is really good. So that all by default makes Astro a really good choice for very, very fast websites or web applications by default. Cool. Now, of course, we do a lot of releases. We've heard this before, and I know we do, but that's because we do just a lot of new shipping. So over the past year, we launched Astro 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to give a little bit more, or shine a little bit more light on those. So we launched Astro 2. Astro 2, the main big feature that we launched was content collections. And content collections are this way of working with all of your content, like Markdown, MDX files, all of them locally with a very, very fast and way of rendering, but also, oh, my thing disconnected. Let me quickly connect back. Yes. So a new and better way of connecting with your content collections, your content. And also we use Zod to validate the schema, which is really useful. So the API looks a little bit like this, where you can see that actually everything is type safe in the front matter when using content collections. Really, really handy whenever you need to make sure that everything is typed. Now, we also brought you hybrid rendering. And hybrid rendering is really interesting because it brings you stuff like middleware, while still having the option of being mostly static. Or maybe you just want some API endpoint to be interactive with everything else to be static by default. You can totally do that with hybrid rendering. Now in Astro 3, we launched a couple of very cool features. And one of those flagship features was actually view transitions. Astro was the first framework to launch view transitions stable by default, enabled as well, and really, really cool. You can find a lot of examples online of how that looks, and it's really cool. Now, the best thing about all of this is actually that view transitions are native to the browser, so there is no real JavaScript needed to interact with them. But also, it's only 2 lines of code, which is really not a lot. And of course, that brings the DX of Astro to be one of the best. Now, in Chrome, I think 126 page view transitions will be enabled for MPA applications as well. That you can do with this very simple piece of CSS code, which is really interesting since it's not JavaScript, but CSS only. Very interesting and looking very forward to seeing that shipped. Now, one of the things that we also brought with Astro 3 and is really good is image optimizing. Whenever you use an image in Astro, you can automatically optimize that. So basically you input a PNG and we will render and output for you a WebP image that's optimized for use on the web. Of course, you can also use that with the picture element. Picture element was requested a lot since it can have multiple sources and has a little bit of a different API. But yes, it also works in Astro and is really good as well. Now, page partials, really interesting because page partials actually get rid of the whole HTML and body component and will just ship the piece that you describe. So this makes Astro good for use with HTMX, or at least something like HTMX that does the same purpose. Really cool. So no doc type HTML, no head, no body tag. Then after Astro 3, we launched Starlight. Now Starlight is not on its first stable release yet. It's not V1 yet. But actually it's getting used by a lot of people and is actually helping a lot of developers writing their documentation at work as well. So Astro Starlight is basically a documentation platform built on Astro. So Astro Starlight, think of Astro Starlight as being the DocuSars that React has. It's very, very familiar, has the same kind of API, but does stuff a little bit differently. It really works well since actually everything is built on Astro, so you can use React components in there, you can use Svelte components, or you can use whatever you want. You can also use island architecture if you want. Cool, but then Astro 4, the latest and greatest, has been released, I think in August last year, and shipped the Dev Toolbar. And the Dev Toolbar is really good. The Dev Toolbar is a new and powerful way to enhance your web development experience, not for the end user, but for you as the developer. So what does it do? Well, with the Dev Toolbar, you can see that here. You have a couple of tools. Like this is the tool that actually shows you, the inspect tool, I think it's called. It's actually showing you like where are your islands located, what do they have as props, where are the files located. You can see all of that without leaving your browser, which is really, really handy. But we also have the audit tool. The audit tool is used to actually inspect images or inaccessible parts of your website. For instance, if an image is missing an alt tag, you can see that. Or if an image is described wrongly, you can see that. Or do you have area missing? Maybe, but the tool will tell you, which is really, really handy. Now, it's an open system. Since we're open source by default, as I told you earlier, it's an open system. So you can build your own integrations. We already have a couple of awesome ones, but you, of course, can build your own one and feel free to submit it to our website, where you can also find all the other ones. Now, next up are some experimental features we've been working on, and a lot of them really excite me. Content collection caching is still experimental, but it's actually a way to enhance your optimizing. You can think of it as incremental content caching, as we used to call it earlier. Why do I have to rebuild all my 3,000 pages of documentation if only one line changed on one page? That doesn't make a lot of sense. So content collection caching will take care of you for that. And actually, because of that, your code base will take way, way, way less time to build. And we have done that on our own documentation, which has, I think, around 4,000 pages now. Last time I gave this talk, it was 3,000, so it's insane how large our code base is now. But actually, for more than those 4,000 pages, we saw an improvement of almost 80%, which is damn lot. So I'm really happy about that. Cool, so then we have, of course, redesigned our own documentation. That was something that we very much needed to do since we now have Starlight. We redesigned our documentation to be built on Starlight, and thus also dogfooding Starlight. Starlight has all the features that we need in docs, and if we're missing one, then we build it into Starlight so you can also use it in your application. And next to that, it's also really beautiful. And of course, that is not everything. There is one thing that I haven't mentioned here yet, but is in the title, and that's Astro Studio and AstroDB. And of course, one of the next things is for Astro 5 maybe, or Astro 6, you have an idea for a feature. Well, we have an open roadmap. And on that open roadmap, you can decide what features we are working on. So you can submit an issue there, you can open an RFC process and actually go through the whole process. And then we might build your feature, which is really cool. Now, Astro Studio, I've mentioned it before, and AstroDB. Now, what is Astro Studio and what is AstroDB? Well, in fast, AstroDB is a database for Astro. It's the database platform for content-driven websites, of course. Now, how that actually looks, I'll show you a little bit later in some code base, because that's maybe a little bit easier. But let me tell you that it's actually, it has a lot of possibilities. You can build, for instance, authentication into your website, or maybe you want comments on your blog, or do you want some feedback widget? You can all build it with AstroDB. And next to that, AstroDB is, of course, free to use and has a very generous free plan for you to play with. I've actually built a couple of websites on AstroDB, and still all of them are in the free tier, so that's amazing. Cool. Astro Studio wouldn't be complete without like a couple of extra apps. Like, what does differentiate Astro Studio from just a normal database? Well, it's the Studio apps. We have a couple of them shipped right now. They're mostly still in beta. This is what the Astro Studio dashboard looks like. And as you can see on the bottom there, there is 3 apps displayed as Studio apps. We have a Studio SQL console, which is really easy. Just an SQL console, so you can execute all of your code there and see what changes, or just some SQL commands because you need to update something. You can do it all from there. Next up, we have Web Vitals. Web Vitals is something that really interests me, and I really hope to see that a lot of you will install the feature as well. It's still highly experimental, but actually you will see your Web Vitals dashboard in Astro Studio. It will connect and you can just see what pages need some improving or what pages are very good. Cool. Now let's dive into some code with Astro Studio and Astro Actions. All right, let's jump into some code. So I've built this basic hello world page here that says hello Frontend Nation, post your own content, and then what people are saying. So what are we going to build? As you could guess, a comment page, like a guestbook or something. People come onto your website, they get a form, and they can simply just leave their own comment behind. So I've set this up in pure Astro HTML components. So post your own content goes to a very simple form that I've built. Doesn't do anything. So if I do Elian says hello, whoops, says hello, I do a title. I'm very sorry, I'm having a lot of allergies here, and a comment. It actually won't do anything. It just does the get as we normally would see with a form that hasn't done anything. So let's check out the code. Code is really simple. The index page just has a layout and then hello Frontend Nation as we saw, and then the comment which is static here. So first of all, I've enabled AstroDB. AstroDB will give me a config here. And in that config, I can import my own models for my columns. So let's make a new one. So let's say const comment equals, and then let's do define table, which will give me a new table with some columns in it. And for the comments, I'm going to do a title, which is a string object. Oh, that we call that text. Let me also import Zod here. Let's make that a name maybe here first. Z.text as well. Let's do the body itself, which is also a text. And then let's say that we wanted to know when it was posted. So posted at Z, and let's make that a date type. And also we can have a default, which is now. And that should work. AstroDB should have a Z. Am I wrong here? Yes, this is just column. Excuse me, column. And then we'll import that. Yes, that does work. Good. And then we import that into our tables. Comment. That's all you need just to have your setup started for the comment. Now, let's also have a seed comment, like one comment that we know that will always be there whenever we start the dev server. So let's do await database.insert into our comment table, values. Let's make that an array that takes an object. Cool. Quickly going to import the comment as well. Is the dev server running? No, it's not. That's why the types weren't working. Now it should. Cool. Perfect. So what do we want to input? Well, we know that we have a title. Let's make that Elian leaves a comment. Let's do a name, which is of course me, and then a body, which is hello world, such a cool Astro app. Done. So if we now go to the page, we see still that old comment because we haven't actually fetched the comments out of the database. So let's do that first. I'm going to go to the index here, start a new variable, let's call it comments, which is equals to top level await, since we can do that, database, which we can import, then select all values from comment that we also made earlier. That's it. Now we have those comments. Now we want to just loop over them and in this case showcase them. Not that hard to do. We just make that object here. Let's do comments.map. Then let's call it comment arrow function. Let's delete that and then have this show up. That should be it. Done. So if we go back now, we see that there is one comment. Cool. We have the comment here. That's done. That's done. Perfect. So let's actually display some comment section now. So here we're going to say comment.title. Here we're going to say the, what was it? The comment.body. And then the name. So comment.name. And post it. Let's keep that simple and just convert that to the local date string. So post it at dot and then date local string. Perfect. And that post has zero likes or no likes. Perfect. Cool. So there is a problem. Why am I not seeing my seed file here? Did I save it, or do I just have to restart my dev server? That should be all good. Yeah, there it is. All right. Now we have set everything up to actually see all my values from the comments table. But what if we actually want to make a new comment? That's why we have this form. But actually, this is still an experimental feature that I'm going to use. I'm going to use Astro Form Actions or Astro Actions. It's a really cool feature. It's still experimental, so bear with me. The API is subject to change. To do that, first of all, we're going to use a client component. So let's make a new component that we call form.tsx. In this case, I'm going to use Solid, but you could also use React, Vue, or anything else. So export default function, call it form. Let's do comment form, since that's a little bit more descriptive. That's a function. There we go. And then return something. And that something that we are returning, let's take the HTML that we had before and put that inside of the form.tsx. Simple enough. Now import that form here. So it was called comment form. There we go. Let's client load that. Done. If we go back to the page, it should still be there. It is. Cool. Now, what happens when we submit the form? Well, it will submit. That's not what we want. We actually want to intercept that. So we're going to use the normal stuff that we always do is on submit. And then that's taking in a function. And let's do prevent default. Cool. Now we actually want to build the action because there is no action yet. How are we going to define an action? Well, in actions, we define index.ts. That file will contain all of your actions. So here we have export const server, define the action is like and comment. Of course, we're first going to build a comment and then build a system where you can like a comment. So in a comment, we actually want to handle it. But first, we want some input. So in this case, we're going to say accept. Let's do a form since we have form data. Then input, that takes actually a Z object. So we're going to do Z, and that should auto import from the actions package, which has an object that will take all the properties that I defined, which was a title, which is a string. Exactly. Thank you, Copilot. It has a name and a body, which is, oh, I think I called it comment in the form. Z.string as well. Whoops, not strong, string. Cool. So let me check if that's correct. Yes, we have a title, we have a comment and the name. That's everything we need. So now in the handler, it's actually very simple. We want to use all of those inputs. So let's take the inputs as being title, name, and comment. Perfect. And now we just want to await database.insert. We want to insert in our comment. Let me quickly import those to make it a little bit easier. So import database and comment table from AstroDB. So await, and then with some values that we just got, and that's title, name, and then the body, that's actually the comment. Yeah, sounds good. So now how do we call that server action from the front end? Well, we just go to our page here, our form component. Let me just reformat that a bit. And now we just do await. So let's make this async then. Await actions dot comment, and then the form data. Now at this moment, we don't have the form data. So let us get that real quickly. Exactly. Form is the current target, but as an HTML form element. That should be simply it. Let's try if that works. Elian, test, title, hello world. And did we do something? It should have. So if we go to the comments now, yeah, it works. So we simply are missing a redirect. Let's add that. Window.location href. I'm going to do this in a very simple way, slash. So now if I write a new comment that says, I am Bob, and I say, I love Alice, hello world, it will redirect me, and we see the comment here. Maybe now that we're on it, let's reorder the actual comment, since it doesn't make sense that the oldest are first. We want to see the first ones first. So let's do order by, and then we do a descending function on comment dot posted at. It's as simple as that. And now if you go back, we see I love Alice first. Cool. Now what if we want to actually like our post? That's a second action. And it might actually be a little bit more complicated than before. So first of all, let's make the input. That's going to be easier. So it takes an input, which is a z.object, and that object takes a zod, well, let's call it comment ID, that we can get the comment ID, which is a number. Cool, and then we're going to use that number here, comment ID. So first of all, we're going to get that comment. So const get comment, let's call it. So await the database from the comments, whoops, select, because we need to select everything from the comment, but of course where the equals comment.id is actually equals to the comment ID. Cool. And we see that we don't have the ID here. That's because we didn't specifically define it. It will have that behind the scenes, but not in your definition. So let's add that. ID is a column dot, let's make that a number, and then let's say primary key true. Let's see if our dev server still works. Yes, there we go. Now we have everything. So now we see that this will work. We have our get comment, and what we actually want to do is update that comment to have an extra like. Do we already have likes in our config? I don't think so. So let's add likes, which is a number that's default 0. Dev server is still operational. Perfect. Cool. So get the comment. Let's do updated comment equals await database dot update comment, set the values likes. And I see that we didn't get the actual comment here, so let's get that. So likes, we set to get comment.likes +1. And that's it. And then we want that to be a returning one, returning dot get. And actually, if you want to make it more type safe, we can do if there is no comment, throw a new error, and then we can get rid of this. Oops. Perfect. And then maybe let's return the updated comment. Let's format that, and that's done. Cool. So now we're again going to call that action from a file. So let's do a like.tsx, and let's take then the code here, which is not a lot of code. So let's do like, do that client load, and we wanted to pass the comment ID. That's it. Let's import the like itself, import like from components like. Let's build that component. So export default function that we called like, which actually has a ID, and ID is going to be a number. Whoops, ID number. All right, and let's return a value, 0 likes, and let's stick that in a button so that the button we can click on. Cool, let's make that type button. Cool. So now we can see that this is actually a button. So what happens if we click on it? Very simple. On click, then we just have a function, and that will do actions. Let's await that. So async await actions dot like, and of course that has that ID. Oops, comment ID, which is the ID. And now we can update that comment. Now it won't still actually trigger since we didn't have a state. So let's build that state. So very simple const likes, set likes, which uses not the state, but creates signal since we're using solid. There we go, from just solid.js would do fine. Create signal, that should be it. So, oops, just from solid.js. There we go. And now we can say likes. Cool. So now if we up the likes, it should work. Now there is still a problem here. In a sense, if we look at this, what won't work? Well, the initial state. Initial state, if I refresh, will always be 0. So update that to have an initial state. Initial state, and the initial state is also a number. Initial state number, and let's make that the initial state. And then in the index, let's pass the initial state to be comment likes. That should do it. Return the updated comment here. So let's then update the actual state to have that. So let's make that a function. Whoops. So let's make this a constant. Updated likes equals await actions. Blah, blah, blah. Let's quickly format that, and then let's do set likes is updated likes.likes. And now we have 5 likes, 6 likes, 7 likes, 8 likes. If we refresh that, it will be persistent. So let's test it again. I am John Doe, my awesome app, blah, 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 blah. Submit that. It has 0 likes. If we refresh, it still has 0 likes. Bam, bam, bam. 4 likes. Cool. That was my basic AstroDB showcase. All right, thank you so much for watching my talk. I'm really sorry that I couldn't be here like live in person. I really would have loved to, but my schedule sadly didn't allow it. Even though I'm not here, please send me your questions. I'll be on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, or Mastodon threads. I'm all there. You can find me with @AlienCodes. I'll gladly answer all the questions that you still have. Now, if you want to stay updated on all things Astro without me being involved, you can do that to astro.build, which is our main website where we post new blog posts, communicate. We have a lot of stuff there. Resources like themes and integrations are also listed there. If you want to have a more direct way of communication or need some help, like support, then you can join our Discord server or the Astro Lounge, it's called. You can search for that directly, or astro.build/chat. We also have a monthly newsletter now, so if you want to get some updates in your newsletter email inbox, you can also subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope to see you in the future somewhere. Thank you so much, and see you in the future. Bye.